My name is Dre Breezy, and you are now listening to The Breeze. Okay, so what's up, you guys? I definitely don't really have a set blueprint for this podcast. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some things that were on my mind. And I'm actually thinking about switching up the format for this podcast because I like shorter podcasts. Like my last podcast was 28 minutes and I loved it. The shorter the better. I can't stand podcasts that just I'm not gonna say I can't stand because that's not true, but some podcasts, once you get to an hour, that's just a commitment that I don't want to burden you guys. People are busy, except for y'all unemployed bitches. Y'all just sitting around, so you ain't got no excuse not to listen to my podcast. But I think I want to use a switch over to a format where I do a podcast. For instance, like Chelsea Manning, and then I do a recap of my podcast because what I've realized is when I'm editing, and usually when I listen to the final product, I always think, oh crap, like I missed this fact, or forgot to say this, or I forgot to connect these ideas. I think I should do a recap just to fill in some of those blanks. So I'll start off with Chelsea Manning. I don't know if you guys listened to the podcast I put out 2 days ago, but it was about Chelsea Manning, who was a whistleblower in Iraq and Afghanistan, and all the struggles she kind of went through after being arrested and in prison for espionage. Basically, what I wanted to say, I gave the years and the dates with Chelsea Manning, but I didn't talk about her age. When all of this was going on, when she first was arrested, Chelsea Manning was 23, which, that's an adult, but that's a very young adult. And to be essentially 23 hours in a cell and having to deal with just the humiliation and torture along with dealing with gender dysphoria, it's just really amazing that she kind of came out of that well adjusted and in a healthy kind of state of mind. A lot of us are damaged, and we ain't never been to prison. So all of that trauma still kind of didn't defeat her. I also want to bring up the fact that it's interesting that pretty much all the trans women that I bring up, they all had traumatic childhoods. And I noticed that with a lot of LGBTQ people, there's trauma early on, and it kind of feeds into that back to that negative feedback cycle where these people sometimes exhibit queer tendencies and are ostracized and marginalized because of that, and then that affects their mental health, which makes them less able to deal with the marginalization. So it kind of, it just becomes this endless cycle like bullying, and then you feel worse about bullying. So, the wolves and hyenas can smell that shit, so they bully you even more. And I just wanted to bring up the fact that, trauma, I think, is something that queer people experience younger and more often than I ain't gonna say cisgendered women, but I will say cisgendered men. It's a problem. So yeah, I'm thinking about just reformatting the podcast. I also wanted to bring up some of my earlier podcasts, like the squeaky bed. I can't remember which one it was, but I just wanted to apologize for the squeaky bed because I was tired and I was like, I'll just record the podcast in my bed. And my bed's, cheap, thanks Amazon, and it's squeaky. And the whole episode, I was recording or I was editing the podcast and I was like, how did I not hear the bed squeaking the whole time? This shit is ghetto. It sounds ghetto. So I apologize for that. And also, every now and then you'll hear this weird sound with my mic. And that's because I actually use my Turtle Beach headset that I usually use to like stream on like as a gamer. I use that connect to my Xbox. And it does well for that purpose, but I don't think this is the best mic for recording podcasts because it kind of picks up on any minor movement I make. It always sounds like I'm cracking my neck or something, and I'm not. It's just this mic. Um So, yeah, I wanted to explain to you guys what I'm thinking about doing. If you have any thoughts about it, definitely feel free to reach out, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. I produce everything with this show, by the way. I forgot to plug myself. Like I produce everything on this show. Like the music, I write the script, I do all the research, like everything is me. So, for a while I was putting out I think a little more content than I could handle, and it was getting a little stressful. So pretty much I'm gonna do my podcast whenever I feel like it, however I feel like it. I'm not gonna feel any pressure. Like I'm not this shouldn't be stressing me out because I'm not getting a check from it. So Lovecraft Country has gotten so crazy and I've gotten so behind. I think I'm just gonna have to let that go. I might do like a whole episode or a whole series recap at the end, but for now, I just got too much going on. Yeah, Chelsea Manning recap, squeaky bed. I'm sorry, I have a list of the things I wanted to address in this podcast. I wanted to excuse my cursing. I'm sorry, guys. I curse a lot. I got it from my mama. Hey, mom. Yeah, I'm sorry. I that's the best way I can express myself, and I curse in private, so I don't curse in public. I really because the way some of these Karens are acting, I don't want to be disrespectful. And I don't want the cops to roll up on me. I'm not trying to be a hashtag. So a lot of times I have to bite my tongue. So in this kind of more personal setting, I feel like I can just express myself, express my voice more authentically, and that involves cursing. And if you have a problem with it, fuck you. But this podcast, I did want to kind of focus on a subject which I brought up in some of my earlier podcasts, and that is Breonna Taylor. So I'm sure all of you have heard by now about Breonna Taylor, who was a paramedic that was murdered in her home on in March earlier this year. My biggest issue with the way that the media is portraying Breonna Taylor is that she was murdered. They keep saying that she was murdered while sleeping peacefully in her home. I think that just does a disservice to the reality of her story. Like Breonna Taylor was not killed while sleeping peacefully. She was killed in a shootout with super aggressive cops that busted up in her house with a no-knock warrant. And I think that is a lot different than the whole sleeping peacefully narrative that we especially saw in the beginning of the media coverage of Breonna Taylor. So just a quick recap. Breonna Taylor was 26 and she was dating a young man. Well, she was dating two people. The first person was Jamarcus Glover, who was a drug dealer, and the second guy was Kenneth Walker. So as she's dating them, obviously she's hanging out with them a lot, but she ends up dumping Jamarcus Glover and pursuing a monogamous relationship with Kenneth Walker. She was with Kenneth Walker on March 13th when the cops executed a no-knock warrant at her apartment. They had had a warrant because of her connection to Jamarcus Glover, even though they were no longer in a relationship. So the cops come with their battering ram and they knock on the door and they so there's two stories. There's three stories really. The police say they knocked and announced themselves even though it was filed as a no-knock warrant. Kenneth Walker says they knocked, but they didn't announce themselves. They just banged on the door. And a lot of the neighbors say they just banged in the door. So there's three stories. I believe the person that was there, Kenneth, and he essentially says they knocked on the door and when they asked who was it, the police wouldn't respond, and eventually they took a battering ram and brought down the door. Kenneth Walker owns a gun. He's a legal gun owner. And when he obviously heard someone breaking into his apartment with his girlfriend, he takes out his gun and fires. These people, he doesn't know who these people are. So he fires, and the cops return fire. That's when Breonna Taylor is shot 5 times. There are three officers that are essentially the face of this story. They are Sergeant Brett Hankinson, Officer Miles Cosgrove, and Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly. Sergeant Brett Hankinson was fired. He was fired because right after Kenneth fired on the cops, Brett, cowboy gung ho Rambo Brett, runs from, I think they were on the second floor of the apartment, the entrance where the door is, runs outside to the parking lot and begins firing at a blinded window. He cannot see who was inside this window. He just chooses a window that he thinks is the window where Breonna Taylor's apartment is and fires 10 shots into this apartment. None of them hit Breonna. The shots that hit her were the shots that were, in the original gunfire. And so, he was fired actually. But as of now, we still have Miles and Jonathan still on the force. The Louisville Police Department, this happened in Louisville, has awarded $12 million to the family of Breonna Taylor. But as of now, they have just declared a state of emergency in Louisville because there's a grand jury that's essentially deciding whether to charge these police officers. They've put down some pretty stringent precautions. I'm on NBC News, and it says that they have put a moratorium on officers' vacation requests, and officers will also have to work 12-hour shifts as part of the department's emergency response plan. So we can already tell from the response what this grand jury's about to say. It's very funny to me that they can pay out $12 million. We can get all these billboards up. She was on, Oprah had her on the cover. We can have all these people, these celebrities and everything that say justice for Breonna Taylor and essentially have one goal. That's, from what I've seen, there's been one goal, which is arrest the cops who murdered Breonna Taylor. And let me just say, where the fuck is the NRA? Like, if this isn't a case of where the NRA should be screaming at the top of their lungs about the Second Amendment. I mean, and once again, whenever it comes to black people owning guns and being legal gun owners and defending their property and standing there, standing your ground, the NRA, their silence is deafening. But that's a whole nother podcast. The police are telling us that they're telling us what the grand jury is about to say. And we all know, because we've all seen this time and time again. We saw it with Rodney King. We see time and time again where police brutality isn't punished. Everyone's been having one message, which is arrest the cops that did this. And it seems like the Louisville the Kentucky government, the Louisville Police Department can do everything but that. They will do everything but arrest these cops. What does that say about the country? I feel like I always say that. What does this say about the country we live in? Because it really does. It's tragic that somebody that was caught in the crossfires of police, and I forgot to mention, none of them had uniforms on. They were all, incognito, wearing civilian clothes. So even when they busted in and he saw them, it was no way to know that they were cops. Like, that's not the kind of country we want to live in. And the people that rant and rave about the police state and rant and rave about the government having too much power and rant and rave about how we need the Second Amendment to protect against a tyrannical government are just silent when these things happen. When we have a perfect example of the state having way too much power and way too much authority they just literally busted up in her house with a fucking battering ram and killed her. And shot her for essentially being protected. Because Kenneth, that's what he was trying to do. He was protecting himself and protecting his girlfriend. And Breonna Taylor was murdered for that. And while, the sleeping peacefully in her bed is a good little soundbite, and it's good, it sounds, I guess, more attractive to the media, it's just not the truth. It's not the truth of the matter. Breonna Taylor's life was a tragedy, which is an indictment. It's a complex tragedy, and it really is an indictment of racism, classism, and sexism in this country. Because I'm gonna have to do a Breonna Taylor episode, but when you learn about her life as a whole, it just was a series she was so rooted in the systematic oppression that we all talk about when it comes to racism and sexism and bigotry. Like, she just her entire life she was a victim. Her father was in prison when she was 6 for life. He was out of the picture for life. There's just how poverty works, how poverty keeps people down. And I'll have to do a Breonna Taylor podcast, but I just want to mention that if you guys are hoping that the Louisville Police Department will do the right thing, based on what I'm reading right now, I wouldn't get my hopes up. But I want you guys to continue to be energized in making sure that future Breonna Taylors don't happen. There has been progress. Louisville Police Department, Louisville police officers now have to wear body cams. That's great. But it just doesn't feel like enough. There seems to be a bill that the Democrats in the House have passed to ban no-knock warrants nationwide. Republicans, of course, are not on board. But we got to keep fighting, and we got to keep making sure that we, the people, have the power, and we can be safe in our homes. The hell? So, rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. I'm assuming that this will be the end of the conversation around her, but I'm gonna try to keep her memory and her legacy alive, because I don't want another one. I don't want to see another. I don't want to hear another story about black people just existing and being murdered for existing. So yeah, I spoke about a new format, and I think it'll be better if I start promoting the black-owned, minority-owned businesses during the recap. So this episode, I want to promote a place called Fish and Fixins. Fish and Fixins is in Concord, North Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte, and that's about all the information I have on it. I'm in Charlotte right now. I've been eating at this place because it's like walking distance from where I live. And y'all, this is a black owned business that just has the perfect greasy food to like get you through the day. I've been eating their little greasy ass burgers, the greasy ass fried shrimp, and y'all, it's good. Like, I'm talking shit, but it's good and it's affordable. And all the people there are people of color that work there are people of color. Everybody's super nice. You know, they're wearing masks like the right way. By the way, having a mask just over your mouth is not how you do it. It has to cover the nose and the mouth. Okay, guys? So whenever I see, like, I'll be at Target and I see everybody wearing the mask and they're just covering their chin. And I'm like, I get, you trying to look cool and everything, but why bother? Like, if it's just hanging off of your ears or it's just covering your chin, you're not doing shit. It's like, just save us all the hassle. But yeah, this place is really, really delicious. The address is 981 Central Drive Northwest, Concord, North Carolina, 28027. Check it out. If you're in the 704, stop by. I don't know, say Dre Breezy recommend. They're going to be like, who the hell is that? But, if you want to name drop me, feel free to do it. Maybe I'll get some coupons or a gift card or something in the mail. Also, I am almost done with Children of Virtue and Vengeance. So with the next podcast, which I gotta surprise you guys. I got two people that I've narrowed it down to, but I'm still I'm getting to the point where I want to start introducing guests. So I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate that into this. And yes, guys, I know it's not gonna just be me the whole time. Yes, I'm gonna get guests, but I want to compensate these people. I want to pay people for their time. And so I've narrowed it down to two, but I want to see if I can get a guest. And if I get a guest, maybe we'll have to reformat that episode as well. So I'm not going to spoil the next episode, but I do want to say I'm almost done with Children of Virtue and Vengeance. And the second book is better than the first one, y'all. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to write about it. But that's going to be on the next episode. So you guys keep watching. And thank you all for listening. This was a random episode. I'm going to try to do random episodes because a lot of the scripted stuff from what I've been hearing just isn't engaging enough. So you want more personality and all that bullshit. So I'm going to try to give y'all a little more flavor in the recap episodes. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. If you want to read any of my work, go to www.findthebreeze.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Dre Breezy or on Twitter at Dre Breezy.